Hi, everyone. I'm back, and today I've got a guest speaker for our YouTube channel today. This is A. Garcia. I met her a couple years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, when I was doing some other promotions, and we've stayed connected to some degree or another. She's got a very interesting story and her personal story, which I'll let her tell, but she's also become very active in domestic violence circles. I thought it would be great to have her on today. We've been talking a lot about the inner critic on this channel, and she has a few things she wants to say about that. We thought we'd get on and chat for a little bit and see what we might be able to come up with. So welcome, welcome to the channel.
Well, thank you for having me back.
Yeah, yeah. You've got a pretty interesting story and a little background. So I thought I'd let you share that at first, and then we can get started on our chat.
All right, cool. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I'll start with the logo. That is an arm in front of a face with the profile of a face, man and or woman. Why? Because domestic violence does not discriminate. CDV stands for Confronting Domestic Violence. That is the name of the nonprofit organization. Our mission is to help real-time victims with real-time resources. So basically, we help you relocate when you have a safe place to go, but not the means to get there. You shouldn't have to leave everything behind when you're moving for safety. And if that was one of the things that was available to me when I survived a double attempted homicide, being 8 months pregnant, thousands of miles away from home, I probably would have tapped into that resource. So that's kind of where this nonprofit was born from. It was born out of my personal experience. Indeed, that was about 20 years ago. And since then, I've kind of been on that journey of soul survivor, soul provider, soul protector,
Mhm.
ultra extreme hyper independent, which is kind of self-sabotaging. You go through a lot. There's a
Yeah,
huge ripple effects after a life devastating moment known as trauma.
yeah,
And PTSD is something that we're so familiar with. I disagree that it's a disorder. I think that it's just a natural, organic reaction that we have that we need to navigate through and kind of figure out. So I choose to focus on PTG,
hmm,
which PTG is post-traumatic growth. Okay. And that's where we become, a tad bit more resilient, a bit wiser and stronger with, our intuition, what we're seeing, what we're feeling, kind of more in tune with ourselves because we have that neurological response that happens naturally and takes us back to a place that we once experienced, whether that's, a smell, a visual, a song, anything.
totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And some of those things are triggers, positive and or negative. So yeah, my story is intertwined and under the umbrella of domestic violence, not just because of that double attempted homicide, but also, teenage years and childhood. I just grew up in that environment most of my life. I didn't know that it was, not normal until I decided to wash my hands of it and not have any of that in my life, only to be faced with fighting for my life.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So the last 20 years, again, just, nose down under a rock, focusing on protecting and providing for my children. I've had to basically sweep everything under a rock as it relates to what I was going through and what I was dealing with, because I had to show up and be present for everything and everybody else but me. So I would say for the past, 6, 7 years, I've been working on emotional intelligence and these triggers that I keep talking about that actually can guide us right into that inner critic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's what I was
So
thinking. Totally. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like we deal with that inner critic. It's more, I have so many things to ask and say about it. It's like, what does that conversation sound like? Is it a statement and then you just convince yourself of what's being said? Or is it like a back and forth kind of conversation that you're having with yourself?
Oh,
And
and
if you
what
were
did you
to,
notice? What did you notice?
I
Was
noticed both.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I
And
noticed both. And before I knew, this is what's crazy. Before I knew that there was such a thing as mirror neurons, I was already in the mirror talking to myself when I was at my lowest point, when I was almost re-victimizing myself, asking, why me? What's going on? I can't believe this. Why? And I can't stop, like I cannot
Mhm.
control my feelings or my thoughts. And I'm like really going through it. And I took myself to the mirror and I started yelling at myself, like screaming and pointing and being so serious as if I was talking to my very best friend who was telling me what I was telling myself. And I tell you what, I would say probably 3 days of doing that. It definitely made a difference.
Uh-huh.
Um,
So that
it,
was you
it
talking back to that inner critic voice.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
was fighting it.
yeah.
I was legit
What
like in the face fighting it.
what made you realize you needed to do that?
I have no idea. It was something that was internal. It was something inside of me because I knew that what I was going through was so much bigger than me because I couldn't control my thoughts. I had no idea how to intercept. I had no idea how to shift them. I just knew that when they were happening, my body was going through this like anxiety driven response. I was literally like, it was anxiety. It was like a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
And I had no resources. Like I didn't even know that this was like a real thing. Like what the heck, is this normal? Do I even talk to anybody about it? Is this something that you do talk to somebody about? Like it was so
Yeah, yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. Our thoughts in our head, we don't know what anybody else is thinking, so we don't know whether we're the only one having those kinds of thoughts, right?
That's
And
right.
it's pretty amazing that you realize that those thoughts that you were having were a problem and you started challenging them because
Yeah,
that's what we want people to do, but we always believe our thoughts. So you had to like get to a point where, well, what if they're wrong? And
that's right.
that's a super critical pivot point there is like, well, what if your thoughts are wrong? And then we don't distinguish that much between our thoughts and our feelings because they're so tightly interwoven, right? And so I feel bad and I have these bad thoughts about myself. I criticize myself and we're off to the races and we don't ever challenge that. So that's pretty great.
Oh, that's right. And there's so much behind that even, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
go
Yeah.
ahead, sorry.
Well, I just was saying that's awesome. It's awesome that you were able to come to that. Was that just alone you're in your alone time or were you working with a therapist? Or a coach of some sort?
So that's the thing. That's where I was saying like I had no resources and it was very natural because this was right after my, fight for my life of my double
Mhm.
attempted homicide.
Mm.
And I have no job. I quit my job, I quit school. Or I waited for the semester to be, over. I voluntarily left my job. I left my family. I left my friends. I'm out, in that new space with an 8-year-old daughter in second grade and 8 months pregnant and no family, no friends. I barely know how to get around the corner to the school and to the grocery store and finding my doctor. Like I was legit by myself. So me having to figure out what in the world am I going to do with my life, and I have a baby on the way in like 30 to 45 days. Okay. And I have no idea from A to Z if you put me in front of the alphabet.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Like
Right.
the last thing I had on my mind was sitting down and talking to somebody. I had no time, no even idea. I'm thinking, are my lights gonna get shut off? Where am I gonna get food? I had to stand in line at, the county office day in and day out, worrying about getting evicted. What am I gonna do with the brand new baby? Oh my gosh, I'm not going back home. you
Well, we
know.
can we can certainly understand why people stay in less severe circumstances. Like if they're
Well,
not.
no, he was, I called the police. He was in jail.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not
yeah.
that I was staying in that abusive relationship, is that I was literally stuck as a high risk, pregnant woman, and I had no resources and nothing and nowhere to
Right,
go.
right, right.
So
Yeah,
so all I had was me in my head.
yeah.
That's it. Nobody else. So, there was no therapy or doctors or anybody around that could help me. It was me and my own doggone thoughts and how is I going to get through this? And, it goes back to what you were saying. What is your belief system, right? Because when we're conditioned by negativity or abuse that we were not even really clearly aware of and how it was chipping away at us, we don't even know who we are anymore. And we can get to that point.
Right.
And, if you're able to like tap into the root of what your being is, meaning if you're able to identify who the hell you're not, then you can
Mm.
start building your boundaries around that and
Mhm.
realizing and walking more so in who you are.
Mhm.
If I knew then what I know now, so for those listening and you hear me saying this, here's four definitions here's four things that you need to define to see if you're walking in your actual definitions. It's the four S's. You know, what is your definition of having your shit together? What is your definition of being successful? What is your definition of being smart? And what is your definition of being spiritual? If you have those four things defined, okay, read those definitions and ask yourself, are you walking in them? Because if you're not walking in those definitions, then you're misaligned somewhere. And if you're misaligned somewhere, you can define where you're misaligned based on your definitions versus your actions. Because if you're not walking in
Yeah.
what you're believing, then you need to see where is that bump in your road and figure out what you're going to do with it.
Right, right. And
Right.
I'm guessing that your definitions can grow over time because when you're in such a desolate place like you were at, the definition of success might be finally getting to the head of the line. Right?
That's That's right.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that because two parts here. As your circumstances change, so do your needs. And so obviously, so is your definitions, right? Because
Yeah.
those are that's
Yeah.
your shit together and your success, right? So yeah, what you just said, oh yeah, the success could be just getting to the front of the line. And I was saying to myself while you were saying that, and I'm like, yeah, the way you're able to think.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? That's the success. While you're in that line and you're trying to get to that front of the line, are you getting in front of that line as this person that is weak and fighting for their life and in need of anything and showing desperation? Or are you there standing up for yourself, advocating for yourself, letting people know why you're there in the line and what your needs are right now and what you need to do and what you need to be? Because you'll be here at 7 o'clock in the morning while that person's turning the key to unlock the
Yeah.
door.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Totally.
How are you showing up when you're dealing with that critic? Because when you were saying before, is it negative? Is it positive? Is it intuition? Is it a flag? Is it a trigger? It can be all that and then some. It's assess your surroundings. Be aware of your environment. Where is your headspace? Where are you at physically? What is it that you're trying to accomplish in this moment? And then figure out what is that inner critic telling you, because that could
Okay.
be your sixth sense.
Okay. So kind of apart from how you're feeling and all those negative thoughts, kind of figure out where you're at, what you're doing, what your success for the moment is.
That's right.
And then if your inner critic is chipping away at that or telling you can't do it or don't deserve it, then you can talk back to that inner critic and um, really make following your success or your spirituality, or I forget what the other two things are, being smart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
defining it as a success.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
so that
Well,
you stay aligned with that.
yep. I believe, in my personal opinion, I believe that we know when
Yeah.
our inner critic is instilling that doubt, when we're just being a jerk to ourselves, okay? And when that's the case, you could be like, challenge accepted. Sit down, son, and watch the game. Let's go. Let's play, you know?
So
And
so what would you say to people who are like, well, but that's how I feel and I want to be authentic? have you noticed that people will sometimes defend their inner critic because that's how they're feeling right now and that feels authentic to them?
Yeah. So I said, okay, well, let's sit on the bench. Let's go in your head. Let's sit on the bench and let's talk about what is making you feel that. You ask that what and why about 7 times
Yeah,
until
yeah.
they get down to what is that root. And usually they're tying it to some previous event that happened. And
Mhm,
they're just going through that neurological, natural, organic response of that memory, taking them back to this negative space, opposed to giving themselves a chance to accept what's happening real time with who they are, because we evolve every day. Like when my kids would complain about why we're changing so much, so why things can't stay consistent, I would say, listen, every time you brush your hair and take a shower, your dead skin cells are falling, they're regenerating, your hair is falling, and you're different every day. Okay,
yeah,
life is
yeah,
the only thing that does not change is change itself, so stop
yeah,
playing.
yeah, 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 yeah. Totally, totally. Okay, so how do I tell the difference between my inner critic, which isn't doing me any favors, and my intuition, which is like supposed to guide me and give me information about what to do or what not to do? But so how do I tell the difference there?
Well, usually the inner critic is giving you something negative that's going to slow you down, stop you, prevent you, question yourself, instill that doubt. So if that inner critic is feeling heavy, negative, and you're starting to question or doubt, then that's kind of going to be stating the obvious. When it's your motivator, your sage, right? Not your
Uh-huh,
not your
uh-huh,
critic, but
uh-huh.
part of your brain. It's more motivating. You are more sure of what you're doing, why you're doing it. Again, to your point earlier, it typically is tied to emotions. We make decisions based on emotions. If we can kind of acknowledge that moment in our decision making, are we making a decision based on logic or emotions? And you can pause for that moment and really think about that before you act. You'll more than likely maybe change your mind or have like a more mature type of approach and or response to what you're doing.
Right, because if your emotion is negative and fear-based and you're trying to make your decision based on that, it's quite probably not in alignment with where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do. But that inner intuition. So what I'm hearing you saying is that inner intuition will put you in alignment with who you are and where you're trying to go.
That's right. Because when you have your eye on what you want to get out of that situation, whether it's an argument or it's something, that's life changing, decision making, whatever the case is, whatever it is, the best outcome that you want for that moment, that should be dictating how you're going about approaching, responding, reacting, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
that situation. It's
Mhm.
what are you acknowledging with those thoughts and that inner critic that you're experiencing?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hope people can really hear what you're saying because I think there would be people who are experiencing a lot of this, like battle with their inner critic and feeling like it's the truth of their life, and not recognize that we all struggle with this. You don't have to have been in a very serious altercation with somebody or in a destitute place in your life. This is showing up
That's
every day for everybody in some way, shape, or form, and it's up to us to identify how it's holding us back or sabotaging our efforts.
that's right. And you know what? Sometimes it's a lot easier when you can identify your options. When
Okay.
you can
Yeah.
identify what your options are to get what the better, greater good of the outcome that you're seeking.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
you know,
Uh-huh.
then it's kind of, you see choices. You see different choices available. You see different opportunities available when you can identify the options that you have.
I
You
love
know.
that you said that because the inner critic will often limit your options, won't it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
feel like you're backed into a corner. Nope, I can't.
It's my
And you
or it's my
go,
only option, or we'll say it's the only thing I can do.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of a sign that, yeah, that's probably not the only thing you can do. and might be time to think about I love that. Yeah, think about your
Yeah, and there you go. That's the negative inner critic. That's
yeah.
again, that's how you know that it's that negative side. When you anytime you feel cornered, how many ways is there? How many ways can you do a math problem? Okay, and still come up with the same answer.
Yeah.
There's so many ways.
There's so
So
many
that's
ways.
the same concept when we have, when we're dealing with real life. There are options, there
Mhm.
are different choices to still get to the end result that you're seeking.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So figure out the difference between your inner critic and your intuition. So your inner critic is likely going to be very negative and holding you back or reducing your options. Your intuition is going to be in alignment with where you want to go and who you are and what you want to be. And if you're feeling held back and you notice that inner critic, those, and it could be a single voice or it could be a whole conversation going on in your head about who you are and how bad you are and what you don't deserve and what might happen if you do X, Y, or Z, right? Then you can start to challenge that. And you said you stood in front of a mirror for 3 days and yelled at it.
Yep.
But what do you do? But what do you do today? I mean, are you still standing in front of that mirror, or is that a little bit less demonstrative? Are you maybe confronting it while you're driving around or
Yeah, it definitely is not as intense.
uh-huh.
I don't necessarily have to go in front of the mirror anymore because I know what that looks like. I can have that conversation, in the shower. I can have that conversation with myself anywhere I need to.
Yeah,
And I still do. I definitely do. I do have conversations and I do go back and forth. It is the mirror work is extreme, but it is extremely useful. And once you kind of get through that, you are able to have these conversations in your own head, wherever you are, washing dishes, cooking. I mean, you have thoughts in every action that you're doing already.
right.
So you can talk to yourself during these same, time frames. And I do want to say something that you said earlier about, the intuition being on that positive side. Yes, it is. But I also want to, say that you can recognize intuitively when you're in danger too, like
Yeah,
follow your intuition on that as well.
yeah.
That's more protective, not negative, but I definitely wanted to throw that out there because when I was listening, I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, but
But
that's true.
yeah, yeah. If you feel like if the hairs are going up on the back of your neck or you're getting that sort of like creepy feeling, pay attention. Like
Yeah.
it may feel
Listen.
negative, but listen to it anyway. Yeah,
Exactly.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. But I can say that I shortened it down to acronym called ACA. ACA is acknowledge, make a choice, and take action. So that's kind of what I was going through earlier when I was saying, usually there's a lot of options available to you. And when you're able to identify those options, then you have choices to make because you're identifying different options. And as long as you are able to identify them and make a choice based on them, then you can act on them for that better good of what
Yeah,
you're seeking.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So acknowledge the fact that you're in the throes of your inner critic and then work on shifting into identifying choices. Is that it? And then take action based on the choice that you're going to make. Okay. That's awesome. That's good. I like your acronyms. This is good. Yeah. Yeah. So when you're in the shower, doing dishes, whatever, and you kind of notice you've got this inner critic going on, you're when you're able to acknowledge the inner critic is talking to you, what I'm imagining is you kind of shift into a best friend mode where you're standing up for yourself against this inner critic. Is that
Well, sometimes it's all different, right? It's not necessarily for me personally. I can't say that I always go into that best friend mode. Sometimes I go into that like protector mode, 'cause I am mama bear. The way that I will stand up for my children, I will, do that.
mm-hmm.
And then there's times where I might agree. I'll be like, okay, yeah, um but then it's more of like that softer, nurturing type of thing where I'm asking myself, why, what, why 7 times?
Right. Right. 7 times. Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with your current, mood and state of mind also. And I
Mhm.
mean, like everything, no matter the conversation, even in an argument, right? It's kind of based on where your thoughts and your mood is, and if you're able to disassociate where your thoughts and your mood is versus where it is that you want to have, the outcome to go, right? Because if you can disassociate how you're feeling and just focus on what you want the outcome to be, you're going to be in your head space and out of your emotional space. So that is probably the biggest challenge. And I would have to say that's what I do the most. That's what I work on the most when I'm going through those motions is I'm working on disassociating my emotions from what I am saying so that I can see the bigger picture and know what is the more mature, higher road to take. Sometimes, and I'll give a perfect example, even if this is so untrue, what I do personally, if I'm arguing with somebody I really love and I really am feeling triggered, and I say, you know what? Don't argue with a drunk, even if they're not drunk.
Uh-huh,
You
uh-huh,
know, if it's
uh-huh.
if it's if it's getting under my skin that much, if it is triggering me that much, I will just say that to myself. Don't argue with the drunk. Don't argue with the drunk. Don't argue with the drunk. You know,
Okay. Uh-huh.
and then I'm able to release what I'm feeling, be more in
Mhm.
tune in what they're saying. And so I'm using that as an example also for when I get to my own space of being, criticizing myself and being negative and feeding into that inner critic. I try to say that to myself and approach myself the same way.
I love that because in a sense, when we get really emotional or if somebody else is really emotional, we are kind of under the influence, aren't we?
Yes, we
Maybe
are
not of
definitely.
alcohol, but of our emotions, and our emotions aren't always the best guiding light of what's going on or, how to interpret the situation in the moment. We've all been in
Yeah.
those arguments with our partners or maybe even our friends or family members where later we look back on it and like, what happened?
Yeah, and nobody likes to say I'm sorry.
Yeah, right, totally. Totally, totally. Well, this has been an awesome conversation, such great gems and a good way to look at it, and your personal experience really brings to life the things that I try to talk about a little bit on my videos, which sometimes it feels a little academic, but it's still important, but you've really put it to life here for us, made it real and actionable, so I really appreciate you doing that for us today. What's would you like people to, like, find you somewhere or reach out to you if they've got any questions?
Yes. I am so inclined to say, be better, not bitter. And
Uh-huh.
it's easier. And yes, you can find me at Confronting Domestic Violence. I am having a gala in October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's our very first fundraising event. We have stuff
Okay.
that's going up for auction, raffle. I mean, it's going to be a great time for a great cause, and you don't have to be there in order to partake and or support. Just check us out at
Yeah.
confrontingdomesticviolence.org.
Awesome, and that's a nonprofit, so if people were interested in supporting your cause, that would be beneficial for you guys too, and they'd be supporting a good
Absolutely,
cause. Yeah.
100%. Yes, please.
Awesome.
Yes,
Awesome.
please.
Okay, that's great. Well, I thank you so much for your time today. This has been such an awesome conversation and very timely with the inner critic topic that I've been covering recently. So I very much appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.